Could your daily routine be full of hormone disruptors? There are more than 1,000 hormone disruptors living rent-free in our environment right now. In our food, our water, the air we breathe, the clothes we wear, our skincare, they all mess with our hormones. The good news is we don't have to suffer through it anymore because now we have Hormone Harmony, a formula made only with herbal ingredients that are shown to reduce hormonal symptoms of women of all ages. Since I've been using Hormone Harmony, I have felt more balanced, and other women feel the same way. The biggest benefit, they say, is feeling like myself again. That's what women mention over and over in their reviews, and there are over 30,000 reviews for Hormone Harmony. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code DATEABLE at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code DATEABLE for 15% off today.
Hi, I'm Yue Xu.
And I'm Julie Krafchick.
We're active daters turned dating insiders.
Here to dive into everything modern dating and relationships.
Welcome to Dateable. Hello, friends.
Welcome back to another on season. I feel like we always have this awkward middle. It's like the middle years right here.
Yes, we're the middle child years. It's the gray area, the gray zone for our podcast. We're off season, but we're on season. We're just not naming this as part of the season. But you all like these episodes. We like these episodes where we get to interview each other and kind of do a year in review in some ways. These are kind of fun.
I think we should call it the build up to how to be dateable era.
Oh, build up phase. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called when
I don't know.
You build a home? I don't know. We're laying the foundation. This is the base salad, and we're adding the toppings later. I don't know if that made any sense, but this episode, I get to interview Julie, and I've prepped some stuff. Actually, I've been prepping for this episode for a while because I'm like, oh, where can we go deeper with what your life has been like in the past year that we haven't had a chance to? So I'm very much looking forward to getting deep. But I do want to reflect back on this same time last year. So beginning of 2024, it seemed like things were kind of in flux for you, especially with our stuff.
What were we doing in 20? I'm like, I can't even remember that far back. I feel like this year. Okay, 2024, I hadn't quit my job yet, but in my mind, I had quit my job.
You already quit. You had already quit.
I remember my manager at the time, who was the worst. But anyways, he's like, you should take some time off in January. So I'm like, great. Because I was planning on quitting in January. I'm like, awesome. Then I will leave in February after I get 3 weeks PTO.
And then you did have cold feet for some of that time because
totally.
You definitely made the decision that you wanted to quit and then go do Dateable full time. But during that waiting phase,
oh my God,
probably was the worst because you're like, this is awesome, not having to be at my job. But then at the same time, am I making the right decision? So things were in flux this time last year. And now fast forward to this year in 2025, you've already been full time with Dateable for almost a year now. Yeah. That's wild. And recently engaged, and our book is about to be out end of this month. So how are you feeling now compared to this time last year?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this is such a good question, like bringing me back. I think that I feel like things are in motion right now. I feel like 2025 is the year that a lot of the hard work comes to fruition, especially with the book, I think is first and foremost. Clearly, we're seeing it actually come out and people can read it. And that to me is so exciting. It just feels like you and I have been working on this forever. So that's really exciting. And then I think like even, the next phase with my partner and getting engaged in December, I kind of like that it like closed out the year.
Yeah.
And it's bringing us into 2025, set up to take that next step together. And we're, still figuring out dates and all that. We're trying for a 2025 wedding because, why not? And we've obviously have now been together. We're going to hit 4 years in April. So not quite 4 years. I know, it's wild.
Time flies.
So it really does. So I think, that's pending we can get our shit together by, summer to fall of 2025. But if in theory we get married in 2025 and the book comes out and, I've now settled in a little more to self-employment and figuring things out and what's working, what isn't, I feel like 2025 might be that year that like things come to fruition more is how I'm looking at it.
So there are kind of like 3 pillars that I want to touch on. 1 is your relationship, 2 is self-employment, and 3 is the book. These are like, we'll anchor ourselves in those 3 pillars. But I think we gotta start with your relationship because last year was your year of yes. You got engaged end of the year, and you always said this was kind of a collaborative process with your partner. Can you kind of expand on what that collaboration looked like?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something we've been talking about for a while. So people are like, were you surprised? And I'm like, no. I mean, I was in some ways like the day of, I mean, we'll link the episode where I actually tell like the full engagement story in here. I can give the cliff notes just so people don't have to hear the whole thing over again. But day of when it happened, I kind of felt the vibe that something was happening because I also knew kind of like the general timeline it was going to occur in. But it was like the right amount of surprise for me because I think I'm just someone that has kind of struggles sometimes with ambiguity just in life and having like a little bit of a time frame, but then the day of not really knowing where I was going or what was happening, but kind of knew it was happening at the same time. It was like the perfect amount for me.
Yeah. And then you both kind of picked out the ring together. You kind of really like you were part of the entire process. It wasn't just on him. And I don't think we've ever mentioned this on our show, but you and your partner went on this like huge trip to Italy.
Oh my God. Everyone thought we were getting engaged.
Everybody thought you were getting engaged there, including, I mean, I knew you weren't, but I did ask a question.
You did ask me, yeah.
I was like, oh, is this going to happen? But you had a really interesting answer. So tell our audience why you didn't get engaged in Italy.
Oh my God. I'm like, is it the same one I gave you? I mean, I just didn't want to bring a ring like across, like
so practical.
So practical. I mean, I told my partner I didn't want to get engaged there. And like, because I don't know, I just like, there's something about like, I have like weird anxieties that are coming up in my old age. I like feel like in my 20s, I was so carefree. I just like was like, sure, let's get engaged in Italy. Yeah, no big deal. But now, I think the practical side has set in a little. And I just felt like it would give me anxiety to know if it was like going from location to location with us. So then like, when is it going to happen on this trip? Because it's such like that, I guess the stereotypical engagement that would happen, why everyone thought it was going to be. So I felt like it just like made it kind of like easier for me personally to just not even have that as like a thought.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I think you would have, knowing you the whole time, I don't think you would have enjoyed yourself.
And then the other piece too, that like, I just think we were kind of naive. I'm admittedly not someone that's been like dreaming about my ring and all that stuff my whole life. That being said, now that I have it, I like can't stop looking at it. And it's just so beautiful. But I've never been like that person. I haven't had a Pinterest board. I didn't know the difference between a cushion cut and like, I don't even know what the other ones are.
Princess cut.
Like, I don't even know all this stuff. So I did feel lucky, but also it holds a lot of sentimental meaning that I was able to get a stone from my grandmother.
Right.
So we had the stone to work with, and then we had to like, figure out the ring, and there's a lot of details even in the ring outside of the stone. I think we were both naive that we thought we'd just like go in, they just like plop it on a ring and it would be done. And it was like a 6-week process to put the stone onto the ring and get this custom made once we figured out what we wanted. And then we had to like go to a couple places, and it just was longer. So it wasn't even ready for Italy. So that was like, it was like a moot point because of that too.
That's true. Yeah. You weren't going to have it with you. Okay. So if you never fantasized about the ring, did you ever romanticize the proposal itself before meeting your partner even? I remember just being like a teenage girl thinking about that day when I get proposed to.
I think this gene has been missing in me, to be honest. And okay.
Surprising as a dreamer.
It is
very
surprising. I will say, when it became real, I like started to kind of think about it more. And I was like, I just want something that feels like you gave this thought. That was more of it. Like, it didn't need to
Yeah.
be like, I didn't need to be like whisked away in a hot air balloon or anything like that. It was more of just, I wanted to know that like some thought and, you know, intention was put into that proposal. And I was very happy with the way it turned out. My partner knows me well. He, you know, A+, he did a great job. So, but yeah, I didn't really have like a predefined idea. I think I was thinking about like things we do and places we go. And I was like, oh, a hike would be really nice. So like when that actually was the activity that I knew was happening, I was like, oh, that would be a great place for it to happen.
Okay, but you said something kind of interesting. You said when it became real, then you started thinking about it more. With your previous relationship, when it wasn't real, but you were trying to make it work, did you have any fantasies about? No.
And we talked in my previous relationship, again, actions and words didn't always align, but he would say things like, I want to marry you and like all this stuff. So the actions were not there yet. And I would not say it's anything close to like where I am in this relationship. That being said, maybe I just didn't believe it fully or like where it was, but I never thought about like the proposal or getting married. Like maybe there would be like little glimpses of thinking about the day with, I don't know, families and stuff, but like not really. And like my friends, I feel like for a long time, I was kind of like, I don't even need like a full wedding. Like elopement would be good. I actually think my partner, like when we first started dating, we talked about, you know, even weddings like early on. And I feel like he had like a little more of a traditional point of view on it. And it kind of got me there as well. I think where I'm at currently is like the wedding industry is insanity.
Yeah.
I've started looking and it's just like the amount of money it is absurd. But at the same time, like if we're going to have people like fly in from across the country, like you want to do something nice for people.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at right now of like trying to balance, like not going crazy and like making some people like it can become your life. And we have enough on our plate that it can't become my whole life to do this. And, you know, balancing self-employment and a book launch is also very much a priority. Yeah. So it's going to be that balance of having something nice, but not going so stressed out.
I mean, just a sidebar about the wedding industry. My friend, when she got married, she booked her venue telling them that it was for a birthday.
Oh,
and it was a third the cost.
Okay, I actually joked around about this. I'm like, can you? And then just show up in a white dress.
Yes. What are they going to do? The venue's already booked. And it was like such a good hack. She's like, I paid $2,000 for this venue versus whatever like absurd amount that they quoted her when she said it was for a wedding. So anyway, just food for thought. The wedding industry is completely fucked up. It is your one day, or technically like hopefully your one day. So they want you to spend as much money as possible. Birthdays come every year. So that's where the difference is.
It's like they kind of make it that you have to. Because it's like if that's the norm, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if the 13-year-old Julie had witnessed you today, what would she think?
I mean, I think she would think that I'm lucky, you know? I'm lucky to have found someone so wonderful. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that is still, I feel very happy right now because I feel like blessed that I found someone that is like my best friend and, you know, that partner that I have been looking for. It's funny because he told this story actually to one of his friends that like he was kind of nervous to listen to the podcast at first when we met. Not because like, I don't know, like I think he was thinking like, what if I like said I was like looking for something that wasn't him? That was like his thought. But he actually like binged it when I did a trip to Vermont with my brother and sister-in-law. Like probably like I think we met in April and this was like around July. So like a couple months in, he tried to not listen to the podcast before that.
Couldn't stay away.
Well, he wanted to like get to know me for me, you know, and not like this, you know, not that I'm different on the podcast, but it is more performative than maybe you are in real life, right? It's like you're on.
It's edited.
It's edited, yeah. And he didn't want that to taint his view of me and wanted to get to know me like real time. But then when I went away, he was like, okay, I'm going to listen now. So I had sent him like a whole list of like the best episodes and all that. And I don't know, it wasn't like I sent him an episode where I was like saying what I wanted. I'm not sure if there was like one episode that was like that. It probably just like came out organically. And I remember him telling his friend, like, I actually listened and realized like I was what Julie wanted. And like, you know, like that. Like all the qualities were there. And I'm like, yeah, of course. That's why I'm with you. And that's why I like you.
That's really good to know. I mean, it's very validating to hear, to have that reflected back to you.
Yeah.
From him, right? That you're like congruent in what you're looking for and then what you put out there. So at what point did you know that you wanted to marry him?
I feel like, pretty early on, I think. I knew, you knew, like this just always felt different to me. That was the word I used. And I remember just describing him as like wonderful, like when I met him. He just was so refreshing and authentic. And just, I always say like we never stopped talking. That was, I think, like the one thing that we both say is so unique compared to like other people you'd go out with. It just felt effortless in like a communication sense and just feels like you were like with someone that you've known for a while. It feels like I've known him more than 4 years. Even though 4 years is a long time, I feel like I've known him my whole life. So I think early on, I knew. And I think what was interesting was I kind of had this thing. This is the achiever in me for the people that have listened to our dating archetypes. And
have you all taken the quiz?
Taken the quiz.
Yeah.
I think I thought like, okay, I met someone later in life. It's all like, working out well. I thought it would move very quickly.
Yeah.
And we talked about all this stuff too. So it was like, I thought like it would go like, year 1, we'd move in together. Year 2 would be engaged. And it's definitely been longer than that. And I think some of it was that, obviously there's 2 people that you have to account for and their different timelines and way of being and doing things. I think the hardest part of our relationship was that I had to like, loosen the timelines a bit to meet him where he was. And he had to also meet me where I was. So it's kind of both work on both of our sides. And, we've had this conversation with like Dr. Alexandra Solomon that it's like very unrealistic. I mean, it can happen. Just 2 people can totally be in sync, but it's not necessarily like a bad thing if 2 people aren't totally in sync.
Right.
And I was like, actually, Matchmaker Maria, I'm just like throwing at all the people right now, but we were on her podcast and she'll be on our podcast next season. But she put up a post that was like, what happens if you're not on the same page? And she was like, I think it's okay if you're not on the same page, but are you in the same book? And I was like, that is a really good way to put it, because I think I had this idea that like we'd always be in lockstep. And then when that didn't happen, sometimes it gave me a little pause. Like I knew early on that like this is someone that like I could envision myself with and getting married to. But when that came up, I was like, oh, is this like me? Like, does this mean something? Like, is this not as smooth as I thought? And I think I had to really like come to terms with the fact that like that's just not realistic. And it doesn't mean that there's something broken in it. And we were able to talk through things and get to a place where we were both feeling more comfortable. And I'm very glad that it unraveled the way it did, because I would never wanted to like have someone rush into things like it took us a little more time to move in together. It took us a little more time to get engaged, but I'm glad it did. And I just feel like we have a much stronger foundation right now than if we had done all this in like the 2-year mark.
So, I mean, we've had so many conversations about pace discrepancy when you were in the middle of pace discrepancy and you had offered some advice for anybody going through it. But now that you've come out of it, at least in this phase of your life, it worked out in the way that you hoped that it would. What new advice would you give to that person who was in your shoes like a year or 2 years ago, who is in the middle of this huge, not huge, but like a pace discrepancy with their partner?
I think hearing your partner out and like listening and figuring out a collaborative approach. So I think with pace discrepancies too, and I'm not saying this like stay with someone that's like not giving you anything. I think there's a big difference, right? Like if someone is like in the relationship and they're like, I do want to get married, but like I need a little more time. There has to be a point though that you're like, okay, I'm not waiting forever. So that's when like you have to state your needs. So I don't think people should ever be afraid to say what they want. But also maybe if someone's not like on the dot, on exactly the same timeline, being able to be like, okay, where are they coming from? Not just assume like they don't want to be with you or they're not ever going to do this. Like, I think those were the hard parts that I had to like unravel, like bad dating advice almost. That's like, if they wanted to, they would, or these black and white statements that you're like, okay, this isn't the person's intention. Like they're just being true to their needs. I think with any relationship, like you have 2 people that have 2 needs, that have 2 ways of approaching things. You have to navigate it together.
So what would you say to someone let's say they're both in the same book. They may not be on the same page, but they're both in the same book. It's just unclear how long this book is.
Mhm.
So one person's like, I definitely want to get married. I just don't know when.
Yep.
And the other person's like, I definitely want to get married and I want it soon. Should the person who is a little bit more ahead give an ultimatum or give some sort of like guidelines? We need to figure this out in the next year or two?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't think it's the word ultimatum kills me. So we talked about this with Allison Raskin with her book too, and she had this similar situation. I feel like if you know that marriage is super important to you and it's something you want, then there's no harm in saying like, this is what I want in this timeline. And that doesn't mean that that's like, I think when I think of ultimatum, I think of like, if you don't do it right now, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I don't think it needs to be that. I don't know if that's necessarily the best approach. But if you're like, hey, I want to get married by this time frame, and they like won't even budge to that or meet you in the middle somewhere. Like I think my partner's time frame and mine were different, but we got to a place that felt right and okay for both of us.
Yeah.
So it's like working together. That's how I view it, as more collaborative than like do this today or we're done.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's different than the word compromise. Because something with the word compromise, it implies sacrifice in some way. And I think collaboration means you're both kind of creating a new path together. And it's nobody's sacrificing or giving up anything. It's different.
I think you're honoring both of you.
Yeah.
And I mean, the more friends I've talked to, I feel like it's something that people don't talk about, that it's like, you think like, oh, it's just smooth sailing, like what's your relationship? And I think there's always going to be differing ways of doing things. And I've had a lot of friends be like, I had to be like, I want to get married. Like, are we doing this or not? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Such a big relationship lesson is when your partner feels a certain way, your first reaction should be, why? I want to understand more. And the next is, how can I help you with that? Like, how can I serve you in what you're feeling? But a lot of times, especially as we get older, our first reaction is judgment.
Yes.
Well, why do you feel that way? Like, why do you need all that time? Or why are you so slow in this? So, like, why don't you feel it? It's a lot of judgment in that knee-jerk reaction. And that's not a collaborative environment at all. It then becomes like, I'm right and you're wrong.
I think you have to think about like your needs, the other person's needs, and then the relationship's needs. Like if you have one person that really wants to bring things to the next level and someone else dragging their feet and like not willing to engage in conversation or do anything like to not to compromise, but like to get there, right? To meet in the middle, then it's not going to be good for the relationship. You're going to have one person that gets resentful, maybe two people actually. Like it's just not a good thing for the relationship, and that's not sustainable. So if you can think about it out of like the me versus you and like what's best for our relationship, you know, pending we both want to continue doing this, then I think there has to be that third entity that comes in.
Yeah. So now that you're engaged, in what ways does your relationship feel different? And in what ways does it feel the same?
It feels completely the same. I think that's, I was wondering if you were going to ask me that. And I think like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say 100%. Like, I think there is this nice feeling of like, we are doing this. Like we're both like saying that we're taking this next step together. I think maybe with family, it feels more ingrained. That might be it.
Yeah.
That like, it's not that it didn't before, but it feels maybe like, okay, this is serious. You know, this person's like, his family was like, welcome to the family, you know, like, and they were like, not that you weren't before. And I think it's like, that is the reality though. It's like, we have been so ingrained in doing life together that I think on a day to day, it doesn't feel totally different. Yeah. And a lot of my friends have even said this about getting married. Like if you have been living with your partner for a while, it doesn't actually like all of a sudden feel like, oh my God. I think you hear of couples that they're like, the first year of marriage was the hardest. And again, I haven't been married, so maybe I'll take this back someday. But I feel like for the people that have been living together, like pseudo-married, that it's the transition isn't maybe as big as if like, I don't know, there's some couples that have been like living at their parents' house until they get married. Yeah. So it's just hard to like compare. It's like apples to oranges.
Yeah. And I think that is a kind of a funny thing that I've experienced with some of my friends is like, oh, don't do the marriage thing till you get the commitment, right? Like, don't move in, don't give him the cake yet, right? But then the argument on the other side is if you don't ease your way into marriage, then marriage is going to feel very shocking because it's going to be very different. And then how are you going to sustain that relationship? So I'll give you an example. My friend who's been married for 6 months, they were long distance, had never lived in the same city together. Now they live together. And she's like, oh, the other day I came home around lunchtime and he just ordered food for himself. And I said, well, now that we're married, you should think about food for me too. And the back of my mind was like, even if you aren't married, if you're living together, you have this other person in your life, you should probably be thinking about them.
But that's hard because the person's been living long distance
Separately,
on their own for so long.
Yes.
So I'm so actually thankful that we weren't on my rigid timelines when in all actuality, I think it was hard for some part of it. So I don't want to say it was like 100% easy, but I think in retrospect, I'm glad that we had a little extra time because, moving in together, I think that one was like maybe the biggest thing because that was setting up marriage. We both were like, if we're moving in together, of course, like it's not like a guarantee, like you could have moved in together and been like, nope, this is not for us. But we were moving in with the intention of getting married someday.
Yeah.
So that was more of that step for him too, because he was also giving up his place where I lived in the place we live in now. So there was more at stake. But I think the fact that that actually was like a little longer, once we moved in, we didn't really have challenges. I kind of feel like we got them all out because we were like, he was basically living there, even though unofficially, like he was there like 6 out of 7 days living there. And I think we like went through a lot of like the living together challenges, like the more domesticated stuff of like the things that roommates even have challenges with each other. But I think if we had just moved in, we might have been like, ooh, do we move in too quickly? Or like, is that, So I think that having the extra time has let us ease into things more. So then it doesn't feel as jarring each step.
Before we get into this further, we're going to take a break for our sponsors. Start the new year with a new language in your repertoire. What a great time to acquire a new language when you're energized and ready to tackle a personal challenge. It's certainly on my list, and I'm so grateful to have Rosetta Stone as my handy language tutor, the most trusted language learning program available on desktop or as an app. It truly immerses you in the language you want to learn by employing fast language acquisition tools, such as no English translations and an intuitive process that helps you pick up a language naturally, first with words, then phrases, then sentences. Everything's designed for long-term retention, so you don't have to worry about forgetting that language when you actually need it. Start the new year off with a resolution you can reach. Today, Dateable listeners can take advantage of this Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off. Visit rosettastone.com/today. That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Redeem your 50% off at rosettastone.com/today. Today. I really think you should move in together before marriage. I really think so. Like it's the ultimate test of a relationship is to live with someone, and you don't know till you spend every day together.
I mean, I feel like people need to do what's right for them. So I'll never say like you have to move in together. But for me, I knew I wanted to live together first. Because I agree with you. It's like, yes, it would have sucked if we moved it together and then had to like unmove in together and all that. But it's still a lot easier than if you get married and then divorced and all that. So it's like one like more, I guess, trial period, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, or it's an ease in still.
Yeah, the ease in.
It's just, you're just taking another step into it. And also, both of you had never lived with a partner before.
Right.
So that was also a new experience in itself.
Definitely. And I think, there's clearly a lot of benefits of living alone that I think maybe sometimes we miss to some degree. But I think there is something just so nice of like basically having like a sleepover party with your best friend every night. And there is something like really fun about that of just like, I love my favorite moment is like in the morning when he'll like come over and just like, kiss me good morning.
Yeah.
And now he's been saying buongiorno after our Italy trip.
He's full on Italian now.
And it's just like so nice. It's like such a good way to start the day. And I think like, I don't think I knew what I was missing with some of that before.
But in some ways, your relationship is a little different though, because I do think some of that anxiety is gone. right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the working through discrepancies in general, like anytime you're going to have any discrepancy, whether it's a pacing of your relationship or just, I mean, I guess there's so many examples of you could have it. But I think for us, that was like the hardest thing. Like everything else day to day isn't as difficult. It's pretty easy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yes, I think once you remove some of this stuff, and that doesn't mean we'll never have anything that we need to work through together. But I think through all this too, it's given us a lot more tools of how to work through differences.
Yeah. So what's next? I'm sure you get this question all the time. It's like, when's the wedding? And you answer that possibly this year. And you just spent a week with your partner's mom and you all looked at some wedding venues. So yeah, what's on the horizon for the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be looking. I'll try to spare
For your big birthday blowout.
Spare the podcast, like the intimate wedding planning details, because it's boring as fuck. Like, I feel like if I was listening and I wasn't in this stage of life, I'd have no interest in it at all. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, trying to balance doing something nice, but also not like making it my entire life.
Yeah. What's been most surprising about this entire engagement process? Any reactions, any interactions, any just like new things that you discovered?
I kind of talked about this a little on the episode we did about just the story, but I was surprised that when we were looking at rings, there were no men in there on their own. It was all couples together. And the reason I bring this up is because I just think it's like a shift that's happening, that like relationships are more of that partnership and, you know, collaboration. Like, I think like we talk to people, they're like, I mean, well, you had that story of getting proposed to in Times Square when you didn't know it was coming. We've said this before, like it should never be like a total surprise that you're getting engaged.
Yeah. It shouldn't. Unless you really like surprises, but I
have like one friend that it was a total surprise.
Really?
Everyone else knew and had multiple conversations about it, you know?
So this friend didn't know that they were on the path to marriage?
No.
Oh my God. And then said yes?
But they are married, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it could work. Were they in their 20s though?
No.
And what?
No.
What?
But that's the only I guess I'm just saying it because it was more
there are
rare.
exceptions.
Like, I feel like most people, I don't know, I think like the way that it's portrayed in movies and society is that it's like this big surprise, but it's just, I don't know, you have to have those conversations. I don't know, like, why would you want to put it on someone too to like ask this question and be nervous if you're going to say yes or no?
I know. Well, it's the rom-coms that are so fucked up because what is that formula? Two people date and then there's a blowout fight. They break up and then he shows up at the airport and proposes and then she says yes. And everybody on the plane claps. And you're like, wait, did you work on the relationship? Like, are you guys are just good now because he proposed? How does that work? Yeah. Okay, shifting gears a little bit to full-time doing the podcast and being self-employed. And this is your second time being self-employed in your career. How is this time a little bit different than when you went self-employed the first time doing 500 brunches? And just as a reminder, this is that Julie had while I was living in San Francisco, and this is how we met actually. She matched people with similar interests over brunch, and then every week would be a different venue, and then you meet different people. And this is how she met her ex-boyfriend too. Yeah. How is this time different than that?
Well, I think it's different in the sense that like we've been building this for 9 years before. So it's like technically, yes, it's like the first year of doing this full time, but it's not really, right?
Yeah.
It's not like with 500 brunches, it was like brand new when I started it. So it was like inception stage. So I think that was very different. I think also 500 brunches was always this idea of, you know, doing it bootstrap and then trying to raise money and get funding because it was more tech driven too. I realized that I just did not like running events. I realized
you were in the events business. That's what it was.
It gave me a lot of anxiety. I loved the connection element. Yes. What I didn't like was being like, oh my God, are enough people going to come to this event? I had this fear that like one person would show up at the group of 8 and they'd be like by themselves. Yeah. So that part of it, I just didn't like it. And it got to that pivotal point of, okay, are we going to like do this? And I did have a co-founder at the time that was one of our dear friends, Kiana. So I didn't know that. Yeah. She like, it wasn't at the start of it, but she was like, okay, I want to do this. So I was working with someone similar to like how I'm working with you. And I think I very much prefer that than to do it solo because I think it keeps you sane.
Yes. And accountable.
Yeah. So I think it would have been great for her to do that. But I think also downside of self-employment, I mean, eventually maybe not, but at the beginning, sometimes you are taking big salary cuts.
Yeah.
So I remember her and I having this conversation and she's like, well, I couldn't afford my current place on the salary. So maybe I could move into your place. And then I was like, okay, you are like one of my best friends, but like we'd work together, live together and be friends. Like it just felt like it would not work. Yeah. And it wasn't just that. That was not the reason why I didn't do it. I think it was more the events. And I'm like, once you get funding, you are locked in. So it was like, I decided, I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is like not what I want to do with my life. So I think that for me was very clear. But I do think it led to Dateable. So I was very glad it did. And it's kind of in the same realm. This is like a long-winded way of answering your question of like what the difference is. But
no, that's good.
I think a big piece of what's different too is, I don't know, maybe I was like younger and dumber back then. I feel like that's been the hardest part of this transition. Like, I'm so grateful that like we've set our business up, that I can do this full time. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all that. But there is like a lot of anxiety that still creeps in for me now. Yeah. That I just feel like I didn't have back then. I don't know. Yeah. I had less expenses back then. I had less like riding on my life, I guess. Like the older you get, I think the more comes in. And I don't know, I'm trying to manage all that. That's like kind of the one area that hasn't been great this year, just full transparency. There's been so much that's been wonderful. But I think the getting ahead of myself of like, oh my God, how do I make this all work? And like, what if I want to have kids and kids are expensive and like all of this stuff. And I'm just like, oh my God, I need to bring it down a little and just, you know, focus. So that's what I'm trying to do for this year is not get so future tripping and try to stay more present, but also like set myself up for the future. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. You have a lot more responsibilities at this phase in your life. I mean, you have a mortgage. You probably didn't even know what a mortgage was in your 20s. Of course, like who cares? Just paying your rent. And if you need to downsize, you downsize. But now you just have a lot more commitments.
Yes.
Financially, personally. So that adds to the pressure of self-employment. I totally get it. But people do it all the time and they always talk about the grind.
Yes.
What is the grind to you?
It is a grind. And I think there is a grind. And again, I am so grateful because I think ultimately I feel very aligned that this is like the mission, like to help people find love is the greatest gift that could ever be. And I feel like for me that struggled so much in dating and not ever feeling like getting to a point where I'm like, will I actually find someone, you know? But getting to a point that I was like, okay, if being single is what it is, it's not that bad. And I can like, that's a good life for me because I'd built that life. But it's a gift, I think, to be able to give that back and to help people and be like, it's not going to be like this forever. Like you are going to find someone. It's all going to work out. That is what gives me joy and keeps me going. But the grind is like, I don't know, like there's a lot with podcasting in this business that we're we're marketing ourselves a lot, which is hard, I think, for me. It feels in line in the sense that I genuinely believe in what we're doing and that we're helping people, but it's hard. You're like the product in a way sometimes. So there's that grind. And then there's just like, I don't know, shitty work, I guess is a good way to put it. Like, and I talked to like one of my friends, like her husband is a founder and people glamorize entrepreneurship and founders and think that they're all like doing these high level strategies. And she's like, he's doing shitty work sometimes because you have to. And sometimes it's like, do I want to pay someone to do this shitty work or do I just want to like get it done? It'll be faster for me just to do it. So, you know, sometimes it's like even scheduling posts on Instagram, like things that I'm like little tactical things. Like there's a lot of it that I love. Like I love writing the posts and putting like our voice out there and doing that. I don't know, like clipping videos and scheduling stuff. Like it is kind of like if you were in a corporation, that would probably be the intern doing that type of work, but you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's trade-offs to everything. There's definitely trade-offs to entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is different than freelance work.
Yes.
Like, right? Self-employment, building a business is very different than gig work. And you're not doing gig work. And so the grind feels more like a grind because you're doing daily things to build this business. And it's really odd for the two of us to even call it a business because we didn't think about it as a business until like 4 years ago. So it is like we've built this and then it would be a shame to let it go. So we want to keep on building it. So if you're in the grind and at least you're building something, what gets you through the day? What gets you through the grind of every day?
Well, I think before I touch on that, because there's definitely stuff, but it's like building a business is way more personal too.
Yeah.
Like when things, I don't know, like when I worked in corporate, like if, something didn't convert or something, it's like, who cares? Right?
Yeah.
Like, we'll figure out a way. But it's hard to like sometimes detach from that. But I actually think you need to be like, it's okay that like this test didn't work out. Like we'll try something else. But I think it's harder because it feels more personal because like our faces, and brand is like associated. I think the other part is that you don't really turn off as much. After I left 500 or I stopped doing 500 brunches, I went back to doing design and tech. And I loved that at 5 o'clock, I was done and I didn't think about it. And I got to do this. This was like a hobby back then. But I think that's the part that's hard about shifting from this being a hobby to maybe more of a job is like I still have to detach and be like, okay, and I think this drives my partner crazy sometimes. Like I will be on my phone looking at Instagram and I'm not just like perusing around. I'm posting shit or replying to people and doing stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess it brings me into like what keeps me going though is like I like to reply to people because it's ultimately the helping of people and hearing people that write us every day of just like how much this podcast helps, how much this work helps. That's what keeps me going 100%. It's all of you that have been with us from either day one or you're new, whatever it is, like those stories, that's what keeps me going.
Maybe you can touch upon the whole selling aspect because I know this is something we are both really uncomfortable with, like asking you all for money and asking you all to buy these products because we're just not salespeople. But at the same time, if you are in line with the bigger mission, then this doesn't become selling, right? So how have you been able to understand the whole selling process?
Ooh. I think this is something you and I talk about a lot, and it's hard. I mean, even our book, right? Like always talking about it. Sometimes I'm like, are we talking about it too much?
I know.
But then I'm like, this is so important and it's going to help so many people. And we always hear too is like, you think you're talking about it all the time. And then people like are like, wait, what are you offering? Like what you offer that? Like we've gotten that before. And I'm like, wait, we're always talking about this program. You didn't even know we had this program.
Yeah.
So I'd rather I'm like thinking about it now. I'm like, I'd almost rather risk over saying it so we can get to the right people than to not say it. And I'm thinking about it too of like, this is we're giving so much of our time and value in the podcast for free. So if people don't want to buy, they don't have to. Like, absolutely not. Like, we're here to help whoever can at whatever price point. But at the same time, it's like we've put so much work into like programs and books. We've seen people come out of our programs and like totally have different results dating, like some people getting married and, finding their person and all of that. So I'm like, at the same time, like, why wouldn't we want to help people if they're willing to pay for it?
Yeah, it's such an internal conflict because you and I are like this, it's like we're not full of ourselves to be like, buy this shit from us and like listen to us. But it comes from a place of sharing because we learned this and it's like we can't gatekeep this. Like people need to know, but it has to come at a value because if we do give a lot of this stuff away for free, people don't see the value in it. There has to be a
Totally.
price to it, right?
And I think, I think what keeps me going with it though is getting those emails or seeing people write back. We had someone in our Facebook group like recently congratulate me. And then she was like, by
Yeah.
the way, I've been in this relationship. And I'm like, I remember you from our Finding Your Person program. I remember
Yeah.
talking to you on the phone. I'm like, that gives me so much like confidence to keep going. Cause I'm like, oh, that's like proof that this was worth it for this person.
Yeah. And our book.
Our book, our
book.
baby.
Our third pillar. Our third pillar. It is kind of like our baby that a lot of people think like the book's been out for a while, right? No.
Yeah. Oh my God. So many people are like, yeah, your book. I'm like, yeah, it's not even out yet.
It's not even out.
It's
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah. What do you think the whole book writing process? We can just quickly talk about that.
Well, I think first and foremost, writing a book has been a dream of mine for a long time. So when we got that email from our lovely editor, Ronnie, we got it like I was actually talking to my partner and his mom about this. It was we did a virtual baby shower for his brother and sister-in-law's first, like his niece. In December 2021.
Wow.
I remember I was on the baby shower and then I got off and I got a text from you, Yue. And you were like, did you see who emailed us? And I was like, no. I immediately checked email and it was Ronnie, who is an editor from Simon & Schuster. And she was like, I've been listening to the podcast. You guys have a voice. There's a book here. Like, are you interested in talking about it? And I mean, that was clearly a high, just like getting that to begin with. And then like working through the whole like proposal part, I thought was super fun. I'm just like, okay, we have all these ideas. Like, how are we going to organize this? We had a wonderful agent at the time, Anna, we'll give her a shout out. And she was so helpful in just like giving us a little structure to work with. And I think just like Yue and I feel like I don't want to speak for you, but I guess I am.
But do it anyway.
We've had a lot of ideas floating for so long, but I don't know if we connected the dots in the way that we were forced to by writing a book. Like people say writing a book is the best way to hone in on your knowledge and like really develop ideas. And I think that's so, so true because I feel like without that structure and this behind it, we would not have put things together the way they fell together in the book. And I think for that was definitely the highlight for me. I loved writing the book. Like just going to a Starbucks on a Saturday, I was like, bye to my partner. I'm going to be gone for the day. And he's like, great, I can veg out and do whatever.
Freedom.
But I loved it. Like I got lost in it. I think that was by far my favorite part.
Okay, with that, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. What is the impact you're hoping to make this year with the book?
I mean, I'm hoping to restore people's faith and love and dating and relationships because I really truly believe that, of course, you can be happy single. I'm not saying that you can't. I do think, though, relationships, especially intimate, romantic ones, are one of the best things in life. And I love my friends dearly. I love my family dearly. And those relationships are incredible and amazing. But there's just something different about having that person that's always in your corner, that's a partner, a true partner. That being said, you have to find the right person, not just any person, because if you don't, then it also can be miserable and you don't get those like feelings of, the incredible part of partnership. So my hope is that people will, one, enjoy dating more because I think it's a shame that it's gotten so toxic. And when you talk about dating, everyone's like, oh, it's the worst. It sucks. And like, that's just like, it should be joyful. It should be good to connect with other people. And the fact that that's been stripped away is very problematic. So I think that's first and foremost is to like relieve some of the stress that comes with dating and give people hope. And I do believe our book does that. And also just like the confidence to like go after what they want because I'm glad that I waited to find my partner because it's the perfect person for me. It doesn't mean that we're both perfect, but I'm happy that like I waited to find that person that like did have everything I was looking for in a partner and was like that emotional and, all the connections that I could imagine that I want from someone that I feel so deeply about.
Yeah. Can we just address the elephant in the room? Because I've had one too many conversations about this, and I think it's I want to hear from your point of view. I've had a few friends say, like, I really want to buy this book for a friend, or I really want to buy it for my sibling. Is it offensive to buy someone a book that's called How to Be Dateable? Let's just address that.
I mean,
head on.
Okay, I'm going to say this like as someone that isn't the author, because I do think buying a dating book from someone, it doesn't land well. A lot of times. Like I was talking about this with my friends, and one of them, her mom had bought her that Steve Harvey book.
Oh God.
And just like left it out when she visited as like a subtle cue. And she never read the book, right?
Good.
Because, well, one is that it was a Steve Harvey book.
Yeah,
but
Steve
two,
Harvey.
I think coming from your mom is never always the best. So I do think a dating book is inherently hard.
Yeah.
I am going to say that. I think what you could say is like, there's this really great podcast that I listen to that, you know, maybe check that out. And, you know, they have a book coming out. I'm really excited about the book. Like, make it more like about, I don't know, just like the light or like we've heard this from people that we make dating feel more lighthearted, that we're here, like, you know, the support of it. It's not like self-help. I think that's the other piece.
Yeah.
And the other side of it too is you could spin it that this is a book about like the landscape of modern dating, and it's not self-help, even though obviously the idea is, you know, to help you find your person and have the love life you've always wanted. But I think self-help sometimes is like a tricky thing to buy for other people. But I don't think it's like, our book is not like self-help traditionally.
Yeah. Right.
Like after reading it, like you're going to feel inspired to date differently and to look at yourself and all of that. So it's not like it's no self-help, but I don't think it's like built on self-help either.
Right.
We're saying everyone's dateable. Like I don't think you have to change who you are. That is absolutely the message.
Not to go into detail about it, but it was not our first choice for a title. I think we can openly say that. But here we are. And we're going to have to really embrace it. But I like this idea of going the personal story route. Like, oh, I've been following these girls on Instagram, or my friend's neighbor is one of the hosts of this podcast, and they came out with a book. Go from that personal relationship to us. Maybe you've DM'd us on Instagram. Yeah. Maybe you've been in one of our programs, something that shows that you have some connection to us, and then gift the book. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know everyone, but we like to think of you all as friends. But like one of my friends was like, asked her like friend from pickleball, like if it would be offensive, she got him a dating book. And he's like, kind of.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, my friend wrote it. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
So I think it felt like she wasn't just like, oh, you need a dating book, you know?
Yeah. Good. Okay. Glad we can address the elephant in the room. What are some of your fears with the book this year?
I actually don't have a fear that people won't like it. And maybe that's naive. I have a fear that it won't get to enough people.
Yeah.
That's my fear more. I actually think once you read it, like people are going to love it. And maybe I'm biased, but I have read a lot of books. And I do think there's something that's just, I don't know, like I think the way that we it sounds weird saying this about your own book, but I do think like the way we've approached it, it's like it starts off with this is what's problematic in modern dating, and then how do you move out of it and really forge your own path. And I think that's so refreshing in what the space needs right now. Like we don't need another book that's giving us like outdated rules or like ways to do dating that just are so generic or feel forced. Like this is about reconnecting to yourself and almost like unlearning. So I think actually that should relieve people. There's nothing new you need to learn in the sense of like all these new tips and tricks. It's more of like, how do I reframe how I come into things? And yeah, I think that it's like a fast read. Our editor described it as a hug. It feels like you're getting a hug at the end. So I do genuinely feel that like once people get into it, they're going to love it. My fear is like distribution and marketing and all that stuff.
Yeah. A lot of stuff that's out of our control too.
Yeah. I think that's the motto, though, is like we're doing all we can.
Yeah.
We've been on a ton of podcasts, which has been awesome in the sense of just connecting with people in the space.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just trying to like appreciate each moment a little more. Just the fact that we had like Greg Barrett, who is the co-author of He's Just Not That Into You, right? Like our quote that's on the front cover. I'm just like, that's freaking cool. Like,
yeah.
I was just like looking even at the back. Like we have Mark Groves, Logan Ury, Dr. Alexander Solomon, Ken Page. I'm like, the fact that we're talking
All-star
to people
team
in that caliber and they've like written us reviews and praise for this book. It's like just remembering each of those moments. And I was talking to my brother actually, and he's just like, the fact that you guys are publishing a book is a pretty big deal. And I think you and I forget that because we're surrounded by a lot of people that are writing books.
Yes.
And we think, oh, everyone's writing a book, but that is just not fact. It's a fact in our circle, but it's not actually. It is still a big accomplishment.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up this interview the same way we started, similar to the same way we started. Fast forward to a year from now when we're having this conversation. What do you hope that we be talking about?
I hope that, okay, so by then I hope that I have had an incredible wedding and
you're already married. Yeah.
I'm married. We're moving on. I had an incredible wedding, all of that. And by, what is it? January 2025, 26. Oh my
26,
goodness.
Yeah.
So there's that. I also hope that I can look back at this period of entrepreneurship and realize it was something I had to go through, similar to dating, that you're like, oh, I had to be in the trenches. I had to like have it feel really hard. And now I was able to rise above it and like build this life that I want. So I hope that that is where I'm at, we're doing it together. That's kind of my ultimate. And then the book too, I just hope it gets to as many people that will find value in it. I know I said like my biggest fear is marketing and distribution, but like honestly, if it can even change the lives of like 10 people, that's a win. And I know it's going to change the lives of more than 10 people, but I'm just saying that as like a lowball number. But I think if it really like was able to get in the hands of millions and like we're in a different space of dating, because I think that's why I'm like, oh, I want it to reach people, because the more people it reaches and people start to like shift the way they date, we're not in this like hellscape of dating anymore. Yeah. My dream would be in January 2026, people aren't so down about dating. It's not affecting people's mental health. They're looking at it as something fun and enjoyable. And like we're actually connecting again. I think right now we're in this state of disconnection and it's so detrimental to our well-being. And if we can be in a place that people are having incredible relationships, whether it's a long-term relationship or even like one that lasts like a night, but they're like okay with it and happy and feel fulfilled, I think that would be the ideal state.
I love that. I'm inspired. I'm ready. If you have to leave our listeners with one sentence, piece of advice, motto, mantra for their love lives as we kick off the new year and the new season soon, what would that be?
I've said this on other podcasts, but I'm going to say it again.
Let's do it.
Is the trust in your timing.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so easy to go down the path of like, I'm far behind or I'm not where I want to be, but everything plays out the way it's meant to be. And I look back and I'm like, I needed all the experiences I had to get to where I am now. Whether that's in my love life or professional life, it all builds on each other if you're willing to look at it that way. I don't think I would have even been with my partner now if we had met years ago, because I think what I prioritized was very different, and where I was looking for people and where I was, in my own emotional maturity was very different. And I don't know if I could have built the partnership that we have today, nor could he necessarily. So I'm glad, like, while there's some days that I'm just like, oh my God, I wish we met 10 years earlier, because then the biological clock wouldn't be ticking and stuff like that, which I think is honestly, that is what fueled my timelines more than anything. And I think that's like the downside of meeting someone later in life, is that stuff comes up more. But then the I need to move past that and be like, what's meant to be will be. And there's clearly so many benefits of doing things a little later in life. The emotional maturity, like if the day comes that I'm a parent, I feel like I'm a lot more equipped now than I was maybe 5-10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be grateful for that side and really trust that it's all working out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. What a fun discussion. I like interviewing this guest.
I know.
This is a fun guest for us.
Oh.
I guess we'll leave everyone with this, just like our book is our gift to you all. It is a labor of love, and we poured our heart and soul into this book. And it does, like now you've heard, it's not in our nature to sell and to market and to pump ourselves up. So if you can help us do it, that's even better. That's even better. I hope you can all see the growth that we've gone through. And Julie, even in just this 1 year, look at how much you've accomplished, how much has changed, how much has evolved and progressed. It's really quite wonderful, like to look at that year in review. So thank you for your transparency and vulnerability and all of it, Julie.
Well, thank you for interviewing me, Yue. I think, honestly, another thing I did not say, but is clearly at the forefront of like what keeps me going is our partnership. Because I think the days that I have felt stressed or I have felt like, oh my God, is this possible? You're there to like remind me. And I feel like maybe I've done the same for you in other situations. I think that is the real benefit of having there's so many benefits of having a partner in this, of just creativity and all that. But like in those times of doubt, you have someone that can boost you up and be like, we got this. Like, we're going to be good, And it's so important. Obviously we've grown so much and done so much professionally, but also the fact that our friendship has been so strong for 10 years. Like that is, you truly
longest relationship.
Truly are one of my best friends. And I'm so grateful for that.
Oh, thank you.
I did tear up when we were doing acknowledgments for the book. Like, I didn't cry when I acknowledged my partner. I didn't cry when I acknowledged my family. But when I got to Yue, I started tearing up. I couldn't get through it. And I think what it was is it was all hitting me that, like, we've done so much and, like, pushed so hard and worked so hard for this moment. Like, it's been 4 years of this book alone, but 10 years of doing this podcast leading up to it. And I think just seeing it all come to fruition was so moving. Yeah.
In what other areas of life can you build something like this with a friend, right? You build a family with your partner, like you have kids and you build that dynamic. But with friends, it's pretty rare to have this opportunity to build something together.
Totally.
So we really do say this podcast is our baby. This book is our baby. We have many babies.
I love that you brought that up too. I know we're at the end, but my last
we're going to keep going.
My last statement. I think with friendship in general, it never feels like you have a common goal. Like everyone's like doing their own thing. Obviously, I think we would have been friends even if we didn't do this podcast. So I don't think that would have changed. But I think the level of friendship I have with you is different than my other friends because we're like building this thing together.
Yeah.
Our lives are entwined.
Oh, yes, they are. Yes, they are. All right, we're going to wrap up this episode. Again, you can get our book, howtobedateable.com. You can reach us on pretty much anywhere except for our homes. Please don't show up at our homes, but you can reach us on Instagram at Dateable Podcast. hello@dateablepodcast.com is our email, or you can go to dateablepodcast.com for all the intel. And just want to thank you again, Julie. It was so fun. Such a great combo. Thank you.
And thank you all to our listeners because we really could not do this without you all. That is what keeps us going.
It's true. It's true. All right, wrapping up this episode.
Stay dateable.